Hey guys, welcome to the second part of tonight's homework. I hope that this review is helping you remember integers. Alright, quick answer key, and then whatever you get wrong, please stick around and watch that part. This problem was tricky last year, especially this part, so some of you should probably need to watch this one. Definitely need to be able to do this. Alright, need any help with any of that? Let's get started. Alright, so most of the problems we do with integers involve going up a certain amount or going down a certain amount, but there's also these other types where it's just asking you how far apart two positions on the number line are. So this one is talking about some of your teachers, and let's look at the 2 points the problem tells us. It says the highest point on their hike is 1,240 feet. So that's like right there. The lowest point dipped below sea level at -50 feet. So notice that doesn't mean go down 50 feet. It's saying the lowest point on the hike goes below sea level, which would be down here, at -50 feet. And then the question is, what is the difference in height between the highest and lowest points of their hike? Alright, so when it's this type of problem, you can actually just add the absolute values of both the numbers, which let me show you. So from the highest spot on the hike to 0, that's just going to be 1,240. And then from the lowest point of the hike to 0, that's just going to be 50. And then it wants to know this distance from here all the way down to the lowest point. Wow, that really looks like an algebra problem with an open number line. We just have to add up these two distances. And when we do that, we get 1,290 feet, you could probably say apart. So the state test last year gave a question like this, where it's a distance apart, but then they're also testing your mixed number skills. So you really got to be good with your fractions. Isaiah is fishing from a pier. The tip of his fishing rod is 53 3/4 feet above the surface of the water. So let's just start by modeling that. So that's up here, 53 3/4 feet. And now you really have to read this next part carefully. The hook on the end of the fishing line is directly below the tip of the fishing rod. So that means right below the tip. It's almost like you picture someone fishing. Here's the tip. And the end of the line is right underneath the tip. And it's 12 2/3 feet below the surface of the water. So imagine that here's the surface of the water, and here's the hook. It is -12 2/3 feet. Notice the problem doesn't say negative, but we have to know it's negative by the fact that it says this word below. So, alright, now we got this problem set up. We have the surface of the water at 0. We have the end of the fishing rod at 53 3/4, and then we have like what he's fishing with, like the worm and the hook, 12 2/3 feet below. So how far apart is this point and that point? Well, same as the last problem. To get from the fishing rod to 0, that's just 53 3/4. And to get from 0 down to the worm, that's 12 2/3. So we really just have to add these two amounts to get the total distance. So we have 53 3/4 plus 12 2/3. Alright, adding mixed number practice. Well, we want to make sure that these denominators are the same. One is 3/4 and the other is 2/3. If I look at 4 and 3, I think to myself, what's a common multiple that I can multiply both those numbers to? So I can do 4, 8, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12. So 12 is the magic number here. So to get to 12, I'm going to take 3/4 and I'm going to multiply by 3 because I know 4 times 3 is 12. And that would give me 9/12. And then for 2/3, I need to do 3 times 4. So let's multiply by 4/4, which would be 8/12. And now when I rewrite this problem, 3/4 became 9/12. And 12 and 2/3 becomes 12 and 8/12. Alright, so let's break this up. 53 plus 12 is 65. And then 9/12 plus 8/12, well, 9 plus 8 is 17. And since they're both 12ths, that stays the same. But that's an improper fraction because we have more than a 12th there. So let's realize that 12/12 would be one whole, and then we have 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That's 5 more than 12, so that should be 1 and 5/12. And then if we take 65 and add 1 and 5/12, we get the final answer to this crazy problem, 66 and 5/12. Alright, part B, this just extends the very last problem. Isaiah lets his hook drop another 10 inches. What is the distance in feet between the tip of the fishing rod and the hook? So, reminder for what the problem looked like. He's fishing over here, and the water's somewhere over there. And we just figured out that in the problem right before, the distance is 66 and 5/12. So that's this distance, 66 and 5/12. But now this problem says he drops it another 10 inches. So it's going to go down another 10 inches. And then we want to find the distance between this and the new point. Now, you might be tempted to stick a 10 here and then just say the answer is 76 and 5/12. But remember the 66, that's feet. The 5/12 is inches. So I don't want to add 10 feet to this. I want to add 10 inches to it. But if you think about inches, 12 inches equals 1 foot. So take a look at this. 66 and 5/12, that's literally 66 feet and 5 out of 12, or 5 inches. So I know if I want to write 10 inches, I could just write 10 out of 12, because that's how much out of 1 foot 10 inches is. I know this problem won't make sense to everyone, but I hope that that made sense to a bunch of you. So if from the last problem the distance was this, now we're going to add 10/12, or 10 inches, to the distance. And to do that, I know that 5 plus 10 would be 15 inches, or 15 out of 12. And 15 inches, that's like 1 foot, and an extra 3 inches out of 12. And so that means that we're going to have 67 feet and 3 inches, or 3/12. Alright, for number 3, we are dividing two negative fractions. And a strategy that you used in 6th grade was to, I think you guys called it keep, change, flip. We call it multiplying by the inverse. Yeah. So I'm going to take this problem and I'm going to write -1/12. But then to make the problem simpler, I'm going to multiply by the inverse of 3/4. And the inverse of 3/4 is just 4/3. And since it's negative, we keep the negative sign. So I'm going to multiply by -4/3. I know my answer is going to be positive because a negative times a negative is a positive. And then I just multiply across on the top. 1 times 4 is 4. And then the denominators, 2 times 3 is 6. And we could even simplify that That's equal to 2/3. For number 4, notice that we're multiplying already, so I don't need to use the inverse at all here, which maybe was a mistake some people made. I just need to multiply across. And again, both of them are negative, so that means my answer is going to be a positive. So I have 3 times 4, that is 12, and 7 times 5 is 35, and 12 and 35 don't have any common factors. Alright, I know these problems are a little daunting or scary for some of you, but you should definitely try them on the state test, and just take your time. You're going to end up drawing 3 number lines to solve this problem. So we're going to solve this problem from left to right, which is what we do in order of operations when we have just subtraction and addition. So we're going to do this part first. And just like we did in part A, I'm going to take these and make sure that they're both either fractions or decimals, and I'm going to stick with decimals. So negative 2/5. If I want to make that into a decimal, I just need to make the denominator into 10 or 100 or something. So that would give me negative 4/10, which is negative 4/10, which is the same as negative 40/100. So I'm going to rewrite this problem as negative 65/100 minus negative 40/100. And you should notice that this is one of the same problems from part A. So I'm going to draw my first open number line for this. We're going to start at negative 65/100, and then we're subtracting a negative. That's like subtracting a weight, which means that this is actually going to go up 40/100. And I know that's not enough to get me to 0, but it's going to get me closer. So in a way, the numbers are going down because we end up with negative 15. Did I do that right? Negative 25/100. Alright, so let's mark that as our first part of the problem. Right now we're at negative 25/100. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring down this next part, which is plus 6/10, and 6/10 is equivalent to 60/100. So now, on my second open number line, I'm going to try this. I got negative 25/100, and we're just adding, so I know we're going to go up, and since we're adding 60, I know we're going to pass 0. So let's start by going up 25/100, and then we want to go up a total of 60/100, and I could subtract this to see what I would have left, and it should give you 35/100. So that's the answer to the next part of the problem. We're at 35/100. Finally, I bring down the very last part, which is plus negative 3/4. And again, before I continue, I'm going to change 3/4, or negative 3/4, into a decimal, which would be negative 75/100. Now I go back to my open number line to test this out. I'm starting at 35/100, and then I'm adding a negative amount, which means I'm adding a weight, which is going to go down. So I need to go down 75/100. I know that's going to take me at least to 0. And then I've gone down 35, so I have another 40 left, which would get us to negative 40/100. And that's why the answer to this crazy question is negative 40/100, and I hope that made sense. Alright, last one puts together a bunch of skills, and I hope a lot of you guys figured this out. So to figure out what to do here first, again, we're going to use order of operations, and the first step is whatever's inside the parentheses. So let's figure out what that's going to equal. So 2/3 minus 5/6. I can't really do that yet because I need to make 2/3 into an equivalent fraction with 5/6. So 3 times 2 is 6, and 2 times 2 is 4. So this problem becomes 4/6 minus 5/6. I check that out on an open number line. And we're going to go to 0 because I see we're going to go down 4/6, and then there'd be 1 left over. Alright, so that's the answer to the first part of the problem. This is negative 1/6. So now, let's rewrite the rest of the problem. So now on top we have negative 1/6, and as the denominator we still have 3/4. And you just have to remember that fractions and division are related because this fraction bar is like a division sign. So if I rewrite this problem, it's really telling us this. And then to solve it, I'm going to multiply by the inverse of 3/4, which is 4/3. And now I can just multiply across. 1 times 4 is 4, 6 times 3 is 18. And be really careful here. This is how they will catch so many unless you're really careful. This first fraction is negative and the second is positive. When you multiply different signs, I'm getting it, it's a negative. So it really should be a negative here, which already, as you can see, gets rid of these two answer choices. Then I can simplify this a little bit. Let's do that. And that would give us negative 2/9, which I see is this answer. Guys, awesome job reviewing integers. I will see you tomorrow.